plan. Uh, Another thought there, it's kind of not quite in the Lower Town mobility study area as the map goes, but the train station. So recently there's a letter that's being circulated about the Fuller Road location being, I guess, officially declined by the, what's FRA, Federal Railroad Association or Administration or something.
Yep.
And then there's also a new development being proposed right now on Depot across from the train station. Just a small one, a mixed use building that came in for a Luke, you'll know the name for this. When you have a PUD, that pre-planning meeting, there's an official name for it, but
Yeah, I'll have to look for that. So this is different from the one on Summit, is it?
correct. So it backs up to the one on Summit. It faces Depot, and it's going to have a small amount of commercial and a couple stories of residential.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So I guess what that points to is right there on the bridge with what would be, say, the west side, Depot just west of the Broadway Bridge, seeing more activity from another small development, but also will we see an expansion of this train station at this location in the future if the other location's been dropped? I know that's maybe speculative and beyond the scope of this study, given the timing, but it does all of a sudden pop its head up.
Can you see the map right now? Or the
Yeah.
Google Earth? Where is that new development that you're talking of? Is it in the
So yeah, I gotta move your hand. So where it says the Ann Arbor Amtrak train station, directly across from that,
Okay.
right there, there's a single story building there, office building, and that's what's going to be redeveloped. It's going to have its vehicular access will be off the same alley that the Garnet is going to be off of, which is just to the west of that lot. Ooh, there you go. That's it. That's the one.
Okay.
So there's residential, it looks like a barn, it's condos to the left of your frame. That's not changing in any way. And then this single story building is what's going to be redeveloped, and they'll have their access off the alley, which is just to the right on the screen there. Like I'm pointing, like you can see what I'm pointing at.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, also brings up, I think I believe the floodplain maps were redrawn for this area after, or maybe they haven't yet been, but after the storm tunnels were put in under the railroad, I believe it changes the floodplain for some of these buildings, which may be bringing in redevelopment opportunity at this time. And so there's another building on the other side of that alley, which then again could potentially be redeveloped. That one right there.
Mhm.
And by the way, Casey's just reopened after being closed for COVID, Wednesdays through Sundays. I'm gonna go there maybe this weekend. Just a little pitch for a local business that's been closed for a long time.
Do you live right in this area?
Yeah, so that's Casey's Tavern. And then the other building that I don't know anything about is the one to the left of your screen,
Mhm.
which what I would guess would be prime for redevelopment as well, if it's no longer in the floodplain. That's been what's kept this area the way it is for a long time. It was all in the floodplain. The Garnet was just above it because it rises up the hill there. That's the one at 325 Summit, East Summit. So I'm not 100% positive on the information I'm giving on the floodplain issue, but I'll let you verify that. But in my opinion, that's what's between the floodplain changing and the new development coming here and the railroad station not happening at Fuller, which might lead to an expansion here. We could see a lot more pedestrian and cycling and vehicular traffic in this immediate area. Just in time for you to wrap up the study.
Well, we are talking about that area today, and I don't know, I guess I'll get into it, Luke. We're at 6 after, so 7 after.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so let me pop out of this, just to look at this area here. We're gonna look first at Division. So on Division, heading northbound, today you have 2 northbound through lanes and a parking lane. And then there's a bike lane on the east side of the road. The bike lane abruptly drops in this area. So you can see there's parking up to here. There's 2 through lanes. The bike lane drops. As you get a little further north up the road, a left turn lane forms. And then you continue on through the curve onto the bridge. Coming through the curve, there's 2 lanes, and then you have the peel off that goes over to Summit. You have the peel off to the right down Cary. Coming up from Depot up Cary, you've got 1 lane that turns onto Division and then onto the Broadway Bridge. So previously, we had shown some options of potentially closing off roadways, eliminating certain movements in this interchange, just to simplify, create less conflict points, hopefully leading to less crashes, less crash potential in the area. What this option does is looks more at how can we address pedestrians and bicyclists without closing off any of the roadways. So it'd be more of a near-term fix, something that could be implemented sooner rather than later. So on the left side, this is further south coming up Division. And what we looked at doing is the blue just represents the bike lane, and it would continue the bike lane north heading towards the bridge. You'd have 2 through lanes still, and you'd carry the parking lane all the way up to the intersection with Detroit. We wouldn't open it up for a dedicated left turn lane. We would share the movement out of one of the through lanes to be able to turn left onto Detroit. The right side image continues us north. And as you get toward where the road curves to head towards the bridge, we were looking at continuing the bike lane, but providing a little bit of a buffer in between the travel lane and where the bike lane is. And then bringing the bike lane, it would have to cut into this median island that's here. And then there would have to be a transition to get it onto the shared use path going across the bridge. The other thing is that we're looking at in this area is what makes sense for pedestrians. Is there a better spot to cross than where they cross today? Is there a place we can put it that would be more visible? Are there options where we could put in some sort of traffic control, like a hawk signal or a rectangular rapid flashing beacon that would alert traffic, stop traffic, and let pedestrians cross? There are some grade differentials on the lanes. So another option for this crossing area, wherever it is, could be to have like a raised crossing that even draws more attention. and would help slow traffic down through this area.
By raised crossing, you mean like a speed table?
It's
What
kind
do
of, yeah, kind of like a table for pedestrians to cross. Yep. So today there's crossings here. There's crossings all around this intersection. Up here, there's a crossing. In the left image, it's shaded over, but there's a crossing here as well. So what we were hoping is we could get some input on if it makes sense to move a crossing up this way. Would that be a desirable position, or are where the crossings are today, are those the best spots already?
On the northbound part, I think moving the crossing further south is a great idea, because especially in the evening hours when there's outbound commuters, the speeds can be a little higher on that, and it's coming around a curve and difficult to I don't know if the sight lines are bad, or if it's just that people are thinking about getting out of town after work and they're coming around that curve a little fast. And then if you've got a pedestrian in there, and first guy could probably stop short, no problem, but the second or third car is facing, cars stopping in front of them for a pedestrian. So I think moving that prior to the curve, further south from the curve, is a good idea.
Looking at the crash data early on in the project, that was what we were seeing and what we were thinking, because coming down the hill, there is a retaining wall, and I don't think you can fully see the crosswalk as you're coming down the hill at the high speed. So someone's crossing, just like you said, the first car slams on its brakes and stops, but then I think that's where we get a lot of the rear end crashes that happen in this area.
And I think also people in the left of the two lanes, if they do start to slow down, the cars behind them don't know if they're slowing down because there's a pedestrian crossing, or if they're slowing down to get to turn left onto Summit. So then they don't know whether they're slowing and leaving the lane, or slowing and about to stop and stay in the lane, if that makes sense.
Yep,
That makes sense.
we have seen that, but that's like that particular issue. we don't have a good solution. So quite frankly, we watched the video footage from collecting traffic counts, and that does happen. In the evening peak, we do have roughly 200 cars making that movement. So it was the relatively short storage bay there. So the conflicting between the left turning cars and who would continue on Broadway, that conflict does occur.
So that block of East Summit Street is there's very low usage of it. And I believe it was one way once upon a time. I know there's, I forget the name of it. Right now, in the last several months, or maybe a year, time flies, it's got one of those things where an advisory lane, is that the right term?
Yeah.
And I've looked at that because it looked pretty funny to start with, and I had my doubts, and I have no judgment on it because I walk my dog around here a lot. So I'm a nosy busybody of the neighborhood, and I don't see enough traffic there to make a personal judgment on how that advisory lane is functioning or not functioning, because the street's so barely used. But that also lends itself to the suggestion of, would it help to make that street back to one way, to whichever way makes most sense. So if you weren't coming left, for example, off of Division and able to turn onto Summit, if it was one way coming the other way, then it would eliminate the uncertainty in those evening hours. it may be too much of of relying on that as a solution for one specific problem. So let me just back up and say Summit is hardly used, if that helps to find solutions.
Yeah, changing Summit would help, but out of the roughly 200, during the peak of the peak period, making that movement, like 3/4 of those would continue to make a left turn onto inbound peaks. Roughly 1/4 would continue on to Summit.
So today we were talking about not closing off any of the roads, but we did have some other alternatives that we had been looking at where, these aren't full size and maybe it's hard to see, but we had looked at closing off the movement that goes to Summit altogether. We looked at closing off the movement where you could turn left after you come off the bridge. In doing these, restrictions, you're limiting the number of crash potentials and stops and other stuff.
Yes, I'm not sure who makes that usage, the left turn onto Summit at this point in time. And then is it people heading down to Depot and then out to Main Street, commuting out that way? Could they go down Cary Street to get to Depot as an alternative? If that was an option you wanted to do, to close Summit, make it one way, or whatever you do with it.
Luke, you had looked at the 200 that go down here. What was it that went to Summit versus turning left on Beeks?
3/4 of them would turn onto Beeks, and 1/4 will continue on to Summit.
Right. So yeah, so the bigger movement is turning left onto Beeks there.
Yeah. So if this connection is severed, the concern is we're, I guess, relocating. This direction is roughly 200 vehicles, and the other direction is roughly like 70 in the morning and around 50 in the evening. So we're talking about maybe 250 vehicular traffic being relocated somewhere else. So that's why we took the approach to, we're not, taking anything off the table, but the alternatives we're looking at this moment is trying to package them so that they're not in conflict with each other, like closing turn lanes or street connections. That would probably take a longer process and more engagement to move forward. We're not against doing any of that, as long as we can forecast some benefit. But all these other packages for bicyclists and pedestrians, we still want to move forward on those, as long as they're not in conflict with future discussion with changes for vehicle connections.
Okay.
We have somebody else on there.
Oh, good.
Chris as well.
Welcome.
Oh, yep, it's me from last time again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were the one who did talk to us about this area in bikes.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know if you were on from the beginning, but the difference with this option compared to what we've talked about before is this just shows leaving all the roadways open and how we could possibly make some improvements for peds and bikes in the area. And if you have further input or ideas, we're open to hearing it.
Nothing really beyond what we talked about last time. I had a couple minutes to be able to check in. I'll have to drop in a little bit here, but I do like the idea that you've got on the right there, though. I think of moving that crosswalk there, and again, avoiding some of the conflict points up there. I've ridden it once or twice, I think, since 2 weeks ago on a bike, and that seemed to make sense to me. I'm trying to, nothing else jumped out is beyond what I think some of the other options that you've already discussed there too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We briefly talked about some of these crossings would be a tabletop or raised crosswalk, but I want to be clear that that is really from the existing difference in grade at some of these lanes at this proposed crosswalk location. So in the middle crossing division, the two like main lanes, the grade is higher than crossing on the west side, crossing the linkage to Detroit Street. So the tabletop would be just on that little connection to the east to the west of the curve, not tabletop the entire crosswalk. So, and we also got to be really careful about putting any vertical device for a main line as to their advantage as well as safety concerns of doing that. When vehicles are traveling higher speed, if they can slow down approaching the vertical device, there could be some negative impact.
Yeah.
So while you have that picture up there, that traffic island would be, that we're looking at in the right portion of the screen, would be something you'd consider reducing in size to make more room for a bike lane, that triangle?
Yeah, I just from preliminary sketches, we think the buffer part would have to be through where this curb and paved area is, and then your bike lane would be a little bit further inside of that. And also it seems like it would then align better to get onto the bridge up as you get for the bike. There also would probably have to be some improvements to the end of this, I don't know what you call that, the bridge wall there. Maybe to,
Right. It's kind of deflected right now. Yeah, that would need to straighten out or something, right?
yeah, I think you'd have to get this opened up more or straight along here to provide more room for a ped and bike to use the area.
Right.
While you're moving along the bridge there, so we have Broadway Park West, I believe is the name of the development from DTE in Roxbury. And is the road bed on the bridge going to be widened? I know they're going to have a left turn lane going into their project. Or is that requiring a widening right there once you get in that portion of the bridge where there's land on the right-hand side there towards Broadway Park?
Yes.
Towards the dog park.
Yeah, so we're looking at this small segment that's between the two bridge decks. So the bridge decks themselves on either side, they will not get widened. But this section in between the two bridges will have a slight widening. So
Has that been designed, Luke? Or you've just seen
That's the
preliminary
section.
sketch? What's that?
what did you say?
I asked if that has been designed, what the roadway is going to look like through there.
At a site plan level, haven't really seen any construction plan or civil plans. So.
That still should be consistent with everything you've been talking about. It seems like.
Yeah. Is the entrance right here where this existing drive, or is it farther over? Do you know?
That's the existing location will be the future drive. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess another, like if we go back to Beeks and Division, another location potential location for a crosswalk would be the further south from the location we were looking at, but still inside this group of 4 intersections. So if we look at the general parameter, the outside boundary, it's kind of the narrowest part of all the streets. So roughly where the hand is. So yeah, for this location, the benefit would be the crossing distance would be much shorter. So for both pedestrians and motor vehicles, I think there could be some mutual benefit from that.
You know, as you come further south on Detroit Street and at the old Treasure Mart building, it has been purchased or optioned by a church. And I think they were just at the HTC. I don't know the results of that meeting. It might have just been a working session, or it might have been the actual session. So there could be a lot more pedestrian traffic. There's more traffic going to come to this, I don't know, more or less, when now that Treasure Mart's not open. But when Treasure Mart was open, what types of traffic came down there compared to if it becomes a church, in terms of the pedestrian versus vehicle?
Yeah, that would depend on how people visit, right? If they drive or walk here. So could be different by different season. So
I guess that's a question that could be asked of the church, to who their current, what's the right word, congregation, who makes up their current congregation and where they're coming from. Did they choose this location because there's a lot of people who live nearby that are members of that church and then would walk, or something else?
Where is this church?
The old Treasure Mart location right there.
Okay, yeah.
For the full formal name of the church, I guess you could look at the last HTC meeting. I don't recall the name. I know Redeemer's in the title, but I don't know the full title of the church.
Okay.
And I guess it's pretty much the southernmost part of the study area, if not extending it a little bit.
right, so we have heard people have made comments about these are lines for pedestrians at this intersection and / interchange area. But that's something we don't have a solid feeling on what would be the most desired location for people to cross. So so right now we're only looking at these crosswalks on the boundary of this group of intersections. It feels like something in the middle could be more helpful, but we're not sure of the exact location.
What do you find specifically with crosswalks that are involved in a lot of commuter traffic? When you use the flashing lights that are activated by the pedestrian versus just having a crosswalk, what does that do in commuting hours to have that? Does it end up getting stopped a lot, or is it better to have those lights so that you can stop commuting traffic, or is it better to not? Because it would be activated frequently and back up traffic.
I know you guys.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I just know you guys have some out on Plymouth Road where it's pretty busy out there. What's your, I was gonna say, What's the experience out there?
So far, it's been servicing both fairly well. It's really a safety feature. So with the RFB, it's just it draws driver's attention to the approaching pedestrian. So as soon as pedestrians finish crossing, vehicles can continue flowing through the intersection or the mid-block location. So we're not seeing any huge backups as a direct result of these mid-blocks. So quite confident that, you know, the safety benefit from these devices is realized without huge cost to motor vehicles.
Yeah, this is the one I hit the most coming into Lower Town.
Yeah, I'll just chime in as a pedestrian, cyclist, and occasional car driver on Plymouth Road. I would agree with what Luke said too. I mean, it doesn't seem overly disruptive, and it's definitely welcomed, especially for some of those long stretches of Plymouth.
Yeah, thank you for the confirmation. And then, you know, still with this location at Eeks and Division, we are a little concerned about what would be the best placement and choice of devices, whether it's RFB or it's Hawk signal, just because it's such a non-standard group of intersections, and like which locations we install these devices and which one we do not. Because installing RFB at all crosswalks, that's going to be very confusing, and it's going to totally change the streetscape. Not really sure to be beneficial. It may create more confusion. So it's just, I guess, you know, more thinking and evaluation and collect opinions as to I guess, yeah, we start with, you know, what the most desired crossing location is. So right now, we don't know that answer, but we do know from the safety perspective, there is benefit of moving the crosswalk further south from its existing location. So somewhere in the middle of the intersection area. And then from that, we'll pick a location and propose whether it's RFB or Hawk, and really conceptualize how the operations will look like, and go from there. So some past lessons we learned from the Hawk signal we used to have at the Huron Chapin. So both RFBs and Hawks, they're best applied at true mid-block locations. Huron Chapin, that was an intersection, so there was some confusion involved with how side street traffic should operate when the main line Huron is stopped. So the same principle could apply here, that if the crosswalk is in the middle of this group of intersections, then it's really a quasi mid-block location. So from that perspective, these devices would function better. But at the same time, we have to be really cognizant of how the overall traffic approaching from all directions would react to this new device.
I'm glad you raised that. I was curious about replacing the Hawk signal at Huron and Chapin, and it seems that what the standard signal is functioning fine now from my limited experience over there. But yes, I was very curious about why it was replaced.
It was just, I guess, you know, from several factors, the ones we just talked about, as well as, I guess, some concerns about the compliance or understanding of the meaning of those indications. For users who are not familiar, sometimes the compliance is not good. And when that happens, it does pose a huge risk to vulnerable users.
Yeah, agreed, definitely.
Thanks for explaining that.
You know. Okay. Yeah. So I guess overall, we're not hearing too much concern with the proposed bike lane extension. So that sounds to me is more, I guess, something we feel pretty solid on at the moment. The crosswalk location, that's something I guess we'll need to do a little more work. But in terms of the location, this location shown here appears to be reasonable for what we know so far. And then we will need to, I guess, think about another potential location, further south of here, where the overall street width is the narrowest. We'll see if that location is going to work, and explore more on the installation of Hawk or RRFB. See if there's any advantage of using one versus the other. So, so that pedestrian package would need a little bit more work. Then in terms of motor vehicle connection, I guess we're not really moving forward with that at this moment. The discussion has been had, and there's some early investigation in terms of if certain turning movements are taken away, then there would be expected benefit from reducing the conflicts. But the relocated vehicle movements to some other intersections, those are negative effects somewhere else. That's a little hard to quantify and fully understand at the moment. So I guess we'll stay open in those discussions and explore them down the road.
Sounds reasonable. I just noticed on the top of the picture, so what would be on the inbound lanes from the Broadway Bridge onto Beeks, the widening of the sidewalk and then a bike lane ramp. So I'm gathering the widening the sidewalk to expect both pedestrian and cyclist traffic to share the walk at that point, and then not starting the bike lane immediately just because you need room, as opposed to starting the bike
That's
lane
just
right at the intersection.
matching. That's matching up with what's out there today. It's just getting them across, because there's not width to start it across the bridge. Bikes are traveling on that wide sidewalk across the bridge. Today, there's not a ramp that gets them into the bike lane. The bikes have to go around this curve, then crosswalk, and then onto a tiny sidewalk or just cut into the road. So this was just to help get the bikes onto the existing bike lane.
It seems to make sense. I guess the option would be to widen the roadbed after you've crossed Summit and have the bike lane start in the roadbed sooner, but this seems much simpler than that.
Yeah, it would probably be a little different than what's shown here, but the idea is just to have a way for bikes to get off the bridge and get into the bike lane.
Yeah. I just didn't notice until just now, but it seems to make sense.
Any other areas that people want to talk about or intersections throughout Lower Town you want to hit on today, or anything further here, Luke?
I think, well, last office hour session, we went into some details about more, and that, Tom, that's the stuff from the field meeting we did when I ran to you. So
Okay.
yeah,
I
if
won't-
you're
I won't make
curious.
Yeah, I won't make you repeat it all right now, but I'm curious. So if Chris has something else he wants to talk about.
Just one other thought about it's more of like a comment there, that triangle northbound division there where we're talking about, like extending the bike lane, the blue line there. One thing I remembered about that, and then when you zoomed in on the I think on the street view, so that island has sort of like a sidewalk around it, and so the good news is there definitely seems to be plenty of capacity to reduce that island. It's really just there to kind of to separate the way that the downward lane for carry there diverges. Yeah, let's see, but yeah, as you're right there in the center screen, I just like to point out there's a lamp post in the middle of it. And that's just something I do see around the city. I've been meaning to start documenting more of them, but just like where there'll either be a lamppost or a signpost in the middle of now I realize here this may have been intended more as a buffer and less as a formal sidewalk, but it does function as one, I think, for some people that are trying to get across there, depending on which way they deem safest. So just that lamppost in particular, it's just dead center. And I see that a lot too. I understand the idea is to get the light close to the road, but but that just doesn't make any sense for that to be right in the middle there. So anyway, so when we dig all that out and move it over, I just want to make sure that the light post gets placed somewhere appropriate where it's not in the middle of a travel lane for non-motorists.
Yeah. Yeah, that's if this is intended to be a sidewalk for pedestrians, it doesn't lead anywhere and there's no ramp. So I think it's more of just a hard surface around the island in this case.
Yeah, I think in that case, the one across the street there actually that you've got on screen, that one is kind of similar, sort of on the west side of the sidewalk. Let's see. Oh, let's
well, this one looks kind of the same, but then it has a cutout for the ramps.
right. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that what I meant was I think there's another lamppost on the west side of Division, just a little bit south of where we are right there. That is also, I think it's in the travel lane of the sidewalk, because I think they were trying to get it close to the road, but not so much that one. Well, maybe I'm wrong. It might have been. Sometimes with the street view, it flips around on you and it, let me see if I can. Okay.
You know what is helpful? Go ahead.
I might have been mistaken there. It might have been when I was flipping around in street view too.
Well, you might be referring to the one headed down Cary.
Oh yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, there we go. At least that one, there's a little bit more room to the right, so it's not as egregious. But there's a couple others around town that I've just noticed that are dead center of the sidewalk. Fuller has several of them on the south side in particular, kind of like in the Mitchell Field area. But it's more of just a pet peeve of mine.
These are kind of tight in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you 4 foot of sidewalk, less than 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that was it.
If not others, I guess, Steve, I really want to show Barton and Pontiac Trail. I think the alternatives there has not been shown before. So
The alternatives we've shown previously, what did we have? Or the ones that I drew up in Google Earth. Barton and Pontiac. I don't know that we have them in this presentation. I think we'd have to focus on what I drew up in here.
Do you want to start from this or the one that that is recommended for this moment?
Do we have, okay, I don't have that handy.
Yeah, it's in
From
the
the
pros and
pro-con.
cons memo.
All right, let me see if I can pull that up. You have it open, Luke?
Yeah,
Yeah, why don't you share then?
can I see it, Steve?
Yeah. Oh, what we looked at a number of different alternatives at this intersection of Pontiac Trail and Barton. Some of the initial ones were to restrict parking on eastbound Barton. Continue to have just a single one lane in each direction on Barton. But restricting parking. What we found that under existing traffic conditions, while it does get congested at times, that it was operating at acceptable levels of service. Another option, as you can see in this exhibit here, would be to put in a modern roundabout, and this is it's a mini roundabout. It's smaller than your traditional that you see other places, and it's mostly put in as a mini because there's not a ton of room on each of the corners. We are showing some triangles on the corner for right-of-way. These would be both for sight lines and to be able to put in pedestrian pathways around the intersection. In putting in a roundabout, we can facilitate the vehicular traffic. Levels of service will be excellent. Having a single lane roundabout makes it easy for pedestrians to cross one lane at a time. And then for bicyclists, they have the option of staying in the single lane to get around the roundabout, or there would likely be sidewalk connections. So there'd be a bike lane and it could pull you off if you're not comfortable riding through roundabouts, and it would put you onto a wider path up through the intersection. Luke, anything to add to that?
How about the center? I would guess some portion, if not the entire center island, would be traversable, right? So the hope is to still have something that's not traversable, so that it's really obvious to drivers approaching from all directions. This is a roundabout. because I know we're balancing the size of the roundabout, trying to reduce the size at the same time. I don't think we can give up the entire center island to be totally traversable.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna pull up an example of one that would have something similar to what you're talking about.
So you're saying you don't want people to be able to drive over part of the island?
Not to just go through the whole intersection.
I guess there's some that are made that way for trucks who need to go over part of it. Is that why?
Yeah, exactly. Just because the size is getting small, to accommodate truck turning movement, you know, a portion of the center island will be traversable.
Yeah, and for emergency vehicles. So here, this is an example. I'm not sure if it's in Ypsilanti Township, but I'll just show you
I'll stop sharing.
what they have here. We haven't got, you know, we're not in design, but what we were looking at is just how would a roundabout even fit into that intersection, being more urban and with housing around it. But this is one that I think Washtenaw County Road Commission did. And they have this center island so that emergency vehicles and buses can get through there easier. Vehicles, you know, they still tend to follow the circle, although you see that truck.
10.
Yeah. So that's over at, where is this? There's two roundabouts here. It's a Hitchingham Road and Textile. I feel like these are smaller roundabouts as well.
Well, certainly a bus route, so they're going to want to be able to.
Those are 90 footers there, Luke. And I'm not sure what Steve had shown.
Yeah, he mentioned about 90 foot.
I'll go back there.
He actually said inscribed circle from 70 to 80 foot in diameter.
That's probably, you probably have to fit like an 80 footer in there. So it'd be similar size to the one I just showed you. Luke, if you want to pull it back up, you can.
Oh. Yeah, I was looking at this location by 1140 Broadway.
That's got one there now.
Yeah. Yeah. But in any of these spots, there are not any homes that close to the intersection as Barton and the Project Trail. So that's still a huge concern. So even if right away is there, just the absolute, you know, close distance from the residence to the roundabout, that's still a concern. So with the roundabout, vehicular traffic, they're getting closer to those houses than before.
How wide is this circle here at Broadway? Just for reference.
Because this one was this new approach here from 1140 Broadway. This is becoming an intersection. It used to be just like one street. It wasn't an intersection. So before that, it's just a curved road.
Yeah.
Now with the intersection, yeah.
Do you know the size of that one, Luke, or no?
It's not really shown on the aerial yet. So just from looking at the width, it feels similar to what we're talking about.
That one, yeah, this one has to be pretty small because that circulating lane, I can't imagine is more than 20 feet. And then that center island looks about the same. It's got to be like 60, 70 feet, it looks like. But I don't know. That's a tiny one there.
So were you saying that there's also another option you're working on?
The other options are much more simplified. We've heard a lot about parking along eastbound Barton on the approach to this intersection. We recommend restricting the parking, putting something. I'll share again.
Okay.
Or are you showing something, Luke? Okay. So we talked about bump out. Right now they have, I don't know if this is still out there today, Luke, but it's like a temporary bump out.
Yeah.
To see how the intersection would operate. What we would do is we would restrict parking along this. We have an option that would put bike lanes on both sides of Barton then, which would match what's on the east side of the intersection. That way, say you're on westbound Barton, you can come right through the intersection, continue on to the bike lane here. Same then for eastbound. The problem at this intersection for bikes is more north-south, because what happens is, are we back in Google Earth now? Are you seeing Google Earth?
No.
Well, no, we're just seeing the bump out pictures.
So today, north-south, you have bike lanes coming that are north of the intersection, and then you have bike lanes that are south of the intersection. When you get up to the intersection, because it widens out for a left turn lane on each side, you run out of space for the bike lanes. So what we've been talking about is, do we keep it where the bike lanes share the road with the vehicles, or do we try to pull them off onto a wider sidewalk to get them through the intersection for both northbound and southbound? And then the green on the left just shows the addition of new bike lanes over there to match what's on the east leg. But ultimately what we found that could serve all the best would be that mini roundabout.
I have to drop, this is Chris, but that seems like that would work. I'm familiar with that intersection, and it seems, both, again, as someone on foot, on a bike, and then also driving it, that would serve all those needs. And and I think in particular what you were mentioning earlier about just the experience as a cyclist there too, right? If you're a more confident cyclist, you can certainly just ride through it, with the lane, or like you were saying, you could you could take the side that you were proposing there too in the other diagram. So
Yeah.
you know, at first blush, that seems reasonable to me. I'll have to think on that some more. Thank you so much for sharing that. And sorry I have to drop.
All right, yep, we're at our time limit anyway, but thanks for coming, Chris.
Thanks.
So quick question before we end, because your time limit. So what would you do with trying to extend the bike lanes if you had the roundabout? The north-south? You still have the same issue that you're talking about, right?
Yes, so if there was the roundabout there, what we showed there is either the more experienced cyclists would get in the lane and go through the roundabout. Approaching a roundabout from all approaches, vehicles have to slow. You have to get down 15, 20 miles an hour to go through, which is in line with what cyclists could do. Or similar to like these yellow lines show, we would have options for them to get out of the roadway, go up onto a wider path around the roundabout and get back in downstream.
Do you have a recommendation between those two possibilities?
Well, I'm looking at the last roundabout that we worked on in Ann Arbor at, I'll just show you what it looks like. At the Nixon Green Duvarn intersection, we worked on this one. So what happens is, see how the bike lane comes up?
Uh-huh.
It's got the dashed line there. So if you want to get into the travel lane, you can, or it's got the slip off onto a wider sidewalk.
Okay.
So you give them both options. It's just a little tighter, or a lot tighter over the Barton and Pontiac Trail.
In terms of available right away.
In terms of, there's already, older trees there, being sensitive of trees and trying to fit in this wider path around it.
Okay, makes sense.
It would be something that would have to be ironed out in a design if that's the option that move forward.
I guess people would need to see the level of disruption that was required. Tree removal, vegetation, et cetera, grading.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for coming, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Take care.
Right, guys.
Yeah, have a good
Thanks,
weekend.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.